Hey guys, tonight we're traveling deep into the shadows of medieval convents where the candlelight flickers over cold stone floors and behind locked wooden doors, secrets fester in silence. You hear the distant hum of Gregorian chants echoing through a stone chapel, but tonight's journey isn't about prayer. It's about what happens when devotion meets repression and how that perfect storm gave birth to some of the most horrifying, soul-crushing, and deeply unsettling sexual practices history forgot to warn you about. From forced rituals to spiritual manipulation, from silence to shame, the life of a medieval nun wasn't always one of peaceful piety. And trust me, you probably won't survive this emotionally intact. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from? And what time is it? Where you are now. Dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not at home anymore. You're a young girl, maybe 13, maybe younger. Your hair's been shorn, your old dress taken away, replaced with coarse linen robes. The air is damp. The convent smells of candle wax, old wood, and something else, something vaguely medicinal, vaguely rotten. The nuns smile politely, but no one tells you what's coming. They say you've been gifted to God. You didn't choose this life, it was chosen for you. Maybe your family couldn't afford a dowry. Maybe you were the second daughter, the unimportant one. Maybe they thought locking you away would protect you. They were wrong. You sleep in a tiny cell with no fire in winter. You wake before dawn to chant in Latin you don't understand. Your stomach growls through hours of fasting. But worst of all is the silence. Not holy silence, the kind that wraps around you like a blanket, but the kind that strangles. No one speaks of what happens at night, of the priest who visits too often, of the abbess who takes a liking to your purity, of the punishments that leave no bruises, only shame. The medieval church had strict ideas about sex. It was shameful. It was dangerous. It was for procreation only, and even then it should be done without pleasure. But here's the thing, telling people to suppress their urges doesn't make those urges go away. It just warps them, twists them, makes them come out in grotesque, secretive ways. And inside convent walls, cut off from the world, watched by no one but God, those urges festered. The idea of the nun as a bride of Christ wasn't just metaphorical. Many novices went through actual wedding ceremonies to Jesus. Veils, rings, vows. But what happens when the husband is never there and the body still longs for touch? The mind finds substitutes. And the church, in all its obsessive hierarchy, offered twisted versions of spiritual discipline that bled into the physical. Self-flagellation wasn't just a male monk thing. Many nuns were taught to whip themselves to purge temptation. The lash became a substitute for sexual release. Some nuns described it as ecstatic, and it didn't stop there. They were taught to think of their bodies as disgusting vessels of sin. Some drove needles under their fingernails to avoid touching themselves in the dark. Others wore tight wire undergarments to cause constant pain to keep their minds off carnal thought. And still others, well, some wrote of experiencing visions of Jesus that were so sensual, so intimate, they blurred the line between divine ecstasy and something else entirely. In fact, many medieval mystics women canonized as saints, described their visions in frankly erotic terms. A nun might say she felt Christ pierce her heart with a burning arrow, or flood her with divine love so powerful it knocked her senseless. These weren't metaphorical. They were the closest thing to sexual experience allowed in that world. So the mind clung to them, imagined them, relived them, over and over. It was the only sanctioned form of passion. But not every nun was content to imagine, and not every priest was holy. Convents weren't just spiritual institutions, they were property. Some were run by noble families. Some were political tools. Priests and bishops visited often. They had access. They had authority. And in a society that gave women no power, a man of God could become a predator without consequence. Visitations for confession turned into spiritual guidance behind closed doors, and there were no parents to stop them. No one to believe the girl anyway. One document from the 14th century tells of a convent scandal where the entire order was implicated in sexual relations with local clergy. Not just 1 or 2 dozens. The priests gave them gifts. The nuns offered themselves in exchange for protection or food or just the illusion of love. When the scandal broke, it was the women who were punished, locked in their cells, denied the Eucharist, called whores of the devil. But the men, they moved on, got reassigned, maybe said a few extra prayers. And even inside the convent hierarchy, power dynamics were deadly. The abbess ruled absolutely. She could make your life heaven or hell. If she had favorites, everyone knew it. Sometimes those favorites were chosen for obedience. Sometimes for beauty. Sometimes for silence. The worst abuses weren't always from outsiders. Sometimes they came from the very women meant to protect you. And yet even amidst all of this, there were women who found ways to survive, who formed secret friendships, who held each other's hands under the table during Mass, who carved messages into the wood of their cells, who wrote poetry that hinted at desire hidden between the lines of psalms, who dared to imagine something beyond the walls. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. Because tonight, you're still in your first week. You haven't been broken yet, just bent. You still cry at night into your thin straw pillow. You still believe someone might come get you. But no one does. And when Sister Agnes leans in a little too close during evening prayers, you don't know what to do. You freeze. You tell yourself it's nothing. But deep down, something stirs, a fear, a question, a flicker of understanding, that this place isn't just a prison of stone, but of flesh. And you're not getting out. Not yet. Your first real punishment comes on a Thursday. You're caught whispering to another novice, just a whisper, something meaningless, a comment about the bread being stale. But even idle words are forbidden during Lent. The abbess doesn't yell. She just stands behind you, her shadow long and unmoving, and says, "Silence is obedience. Obedience is salvation." Then she nods to Sister Clement, who leads you down a narrow hallway you've never been down before. The door creaks open to reveal a stone chamber, empty, except for a low bench and a long leather strap hanging from the wall like a snake. You're told to lie down. You don't understand. You do it anyway. The first strike is so sharp it lifts you off the wood. The second leaves something wet behind, blood maybe, or your own sweat. Sister Clement doesn't speak. She counts under her breath, Latin numbers lost on your ears. She tells you it's not punishment, it's purification, that your soul is cleaner now. You can't walk straight for 2 days. And yet when you return to morning prayers, the abbess nods with approval. You've been initiated. What they never tell you about convent life is how much of it revolves around the body. For a place obsessed with purity, everything is so physical. Kneeling on cold stone until your knees bruise, holding poses during liturgical chants until your muscles cramp, fasting until your stomach gnaws at itself. It's all pain, and pain becomes normal. You begin to understand why the older nuns speak of suffering with a strange reverence. They call it mortification of the flesh. They say that the body must die a little so the soul can rise. Some of them wear hair shirts beneath their habits, coarse garments that itch and sting constantly. You try one. You last 2 hours before tearing it off in shame. You're weak, they say, but one day you'll be strong. The stories start to reach you, whispers traded in the laundry room behind the kitchens late at night when the candle's just about to burn out. One nun claimed she saw Sister Isabella flagellating herself in the garden at midnight, completely naked, murmuring prayers between gasps. Another says the abbess keeps a silver cross in her private chamber, not for display, but for insertion. You don't believe it. You don't want to. But your brain stores it anyway, like poison under the tongue. And then there's confession. You're made to confess weekly. You kneel in a wooden booth while a priest sits unseen behind a veil, his voice a low purr. He asks the standard questions. Have you harbored impure thoughts? Have you touched yourself beneath your robes? Have you dreamed of men or women? The way he says it makes your stomach twist. He pauses after your answers. Sometimes he probes further. Tell me exactly what you felt. Where did your fingers go? You're too naive at first to understand why he wants the details, but eventually you realize he's not purifying your soul. He's feeding on your shame, and there's nothing you can do. He's a man of God. You're just a girl behind a veil. The Church's obsession with virginity isn't just spiritual, it's physical, bureaucratic, anatomical. Before you were accepted into the convent, a midwife performed a test. 2 fingers, no warning. They called it a virginity inspection. And if you'd failed it, they might not have let you take the veil. Some convents were stricter than others. Some kept written records. There were even whispers of nuns being forced to undergo regular checks to ensure that no violation had occurred. Of course, it didn't work the other way around. If a priest forced himself on a nun, she was often blamed, accused of seduction, of being a temptress in holy robes. The Church had terms for it: religious woman, fallen bride of Christ, defiled. There are archived court documents where nuns testified about assault and were told they had invited the devil into the cloister. One even described how the bishop who judged her later asked her to serve as his private attendant. There was no winning, and so many nuns learned to survive however they could. Some gave in. Some faked illnesses to avoid certain priests. Others fought back in subtle ways, sabotaging confession schedules, swapping shifts, hiding in the herb gardens until night fell. Some wrote about their experiences under false names. One such manuscript, discovered centuries later in a French abbey, described a circle of sisters who engaged in what they called holy unions, ritualized relationships between nuns that mirrored marriage, complete with vows and secret kisses exchanged behind chapel curtains. They said it made them feel less alone, less helpless. But even those relationships weren't safe from scrutiny. The Church occasionally launched inquisitions into convents suspected of sodomy, a term used broadly to include any form of same-sex intimacy. Nuns were interrogated. Some were tortured. Some burned. One particularly cruel investigation in 1327 ended with 5 nuns being sealed in their cells to die slowly of starvation, their sins bricked up with them. You try not to think about that when Sister Agnes smiles at you, but you do, and you begin to notice things. The way Sister Agnes touches your hand a little too long, the way she watches you change your robes when she thinks you're not looking, the way she always volunteers to guide your meditation. She says you remind her of herself when she was your age. You don't know what to make of it. You crave comfort, but not like this. At night, you pray harder. You whisper to God to protect you, even though you're starting to wonder if He listens, or if He's even allowed in here. This doesn't feel like His place. This feels like something else, something colder. And yet, there are moments, tiny aching moments when one of the sisters sings a hymn and her voice cracks with emotion. Or when you hold a warm cup of soup in trembling hands after a day of punishment, and you remember what it's like to be human. You cling to those moments, because the rest of it is only getting worse. By now you've learned how to move through the cloister like a shadow. Not too slow, not too fast. Eyes downcast, voice soft, spine straight. Every movement is a prayer, every breath a sacrifice. But the habits you've learned to keep yourself safe also make you invisible. And in a convent like this, invisibility is a double-edged sword. You watch the older nuns with growing unease. They seem detached from the world, their eyes always half-lidded, as if staring inward, searching for a God who never quite answers back. Sister Helena, who has been in the order for nearly 3 decades, doesn't speak unless spoken to. But you've seen her flinch at sudden noises. You've seen the scars on her wrists when her sleeves slipped during gardening. You once heard a story whispered during candle maintenance how Helena was found years ago locked in the vestry with a young priest, both naked and weeping, begging for forgiveness from a Christ who never knocked. He was transferred. She was kept. She was needed, the abbess said. The convent couldn't afford to lose a sister with embroidery skills like hers. You didn't know whether to feel angry or terrified. What you do know is this: the convent isn't a place of healing. It's a place of containment, a warehouse of broken women, some sent here for punishment, some to silence their tongues, some to save the reputations of wealthy fathers. The church dressed it all in the language of piety, of sanctity. But once the doors closed, what remained was something raw, stripped of metaphor. There are rituals most outside the cloister never see. Twice a year, during the Feast of the Immaculate Conception and the Feast of Mary Magdalene, the convent performs a purification ceremony that only the sisters attend. You're told it's sacred. You're told it's about renewal. What they don't tell you is that it involves nakedness, silence, and the laying on of hands. You are summoned before dawn, stripped of your robe and anointed with oil by the abbess herself. Her fingers move across your collarbones, down your spine, over your thighs. It is supposed to represent cleansing, a return to innocence. But you feel her breath on your ear, the way her hands linger, and you understand that this is not a sacrament. It's a performance, and you're the altar. No one meets your eyes afterward. You begin to dream differently. At first, the dreams are pure fear, hands grabbing at you, your cell door flying open in the middle of the night, the sound of chanting turning into laughter. But then the dreams begin to twist. You see Christ in them, but he's not the bleeding crucified figure from the chapel wall. He's radiant, soft-eyed, and his touch makes your skin burn, not with shame, but with hunger. You wake gasping, tangled in sweat-damp sheets, your heart pounding with guilt. These dreams are not random. They are symptoms. Your body, starved of affection and crushed under the weight of control, is creating fantasies it thinks will comfort you. And that's what terrifies you the most, not the dreams themselves, but the part of you that wants to return to them. That wants something more than fasting and lashes and sacred oil. That wants to be seen. Even if it's by someone forbidden. Even if it's by Sister Agnes. Because Agnes hasn't stopped watching. Her kindness is suffocating. She leaves extra bread for you when she thinks no one is looking. She offers you her scarf when you cough in the cold. She tells you stories from when she was a novice, stories that sound suspiciously like yours. You suspect she sees herself in you, and that's what makes her dangerous. One evening, after a particularly brutal round of self-mortification exercises, you return to your cell, barely able to stand. Your palms are bleeding from kneeling on gravel. You try to undress without crying. That's when Agnes appears in your doorway, silent as a ghost. She doesn't ask permission. She just steps in, shuts the door behind her, and helps you undress. Her hands are gentle, too gentle. She wipes your blood with a damp cloth. She strokes your cheek. She says nothing. Then she kisses your shoulder. You don't move. You don't resist. But your stomach clenches, not with revulsion, but with something far more confusing. Because the touch is soft. It's the first softness you've felt in months. And part of you, some lonely, desperate part, wants to lean into it. Wants to be held. Wants to be desired, even if it's by someone who's supposed to be your sister in Christ. But that same part of you also knows what this is, a trap disguised as tenderness. You pull away. She doesn't force you. She just sighs and says, "One day you'll understand." You sleep curled against the wall as far from the door as you can get, heart pounding, with the realization that the danger isn't always the men. Sometimes it's the women who have lived here too long, who have forgotten what real love is supposed to feel like. The next morning, nothing is said. Agnes smiles like nothing happened. But your cell feels smaller now. The walls seem closer. You keep to yourself in the days that follow. You avoid the abbess's gaze. You stop going to confession. You fake stomach aches to avoid the bathhouse. You know it's only a matter of time before someone notices your absence, your resistance, and you're right. Punishment comes not as a beating, but as something worse, isolation. You are no longer allowed to speak, not just during prayer, but always. You are placed on what they call the vow of greater silence. Your meals are brought to you, your duties reassigned. You are invisible in a different way now, a kind of spiritual quarantine. You think it will be easy, peaceful even. It's not. It breaks you faster than the strap ever could. Because when you're not even allowed to sing, to hum, to whisper a thought aloud, you begin to lose your shape. You become an echo. And in the silence, your mind starts to whisper things. Ugly things. Memories. Fantasies. Fears. The convent's cruelty doesn't always arrive with violence. Sometimes it arrives like this quiet, unseen and unstoppable. And still you stay. Because you have nowhere else to go. The silence becomes a second skin. At first it itches. Then it smothers. Then, like everything else in the convent, it becomes normal. You begin to understand why some of the older sisters move like ghosts, why they speak in sighs and pray with empty eyes. Silence has swallowed them whole, and now it's nibbling at the edges of you. But the silence also gives you time to observe. You notice patterns you missed before. Who eats quickly? Who lingers in the chapel? Who trades glances across the table? You watch Sister Beatrice slip a note into Sister Elena's sleeve. You see them meet in the laundry house late at night, their candlelight flickering against the walls, their shadows close, too close. They think no one sees, but the abbess sees everything. A week later, Elena is transferred. No explanation, just a new name on the chore list, and Beatrice walking like her bones have collapsed. That's how it works here. Love doesn't get punished for being sinful. It gets punished for being noticed. If you keep your sins quiet, if you confess them just right, cry, just hard enough, you're forgiven. But if you love someone more than you love the order, that's treason, that's heresy, and they know how to deal with heretics. In the library, you find something hidden behind a loose stone. A small, leather-bound journal, no name. The handwriting is careful, deliberate. You open it slowly, feeling as if you're trespassing. What you read makes your throat tighten. The writer speaks of the abbess, not just as a leader, but as a predator. She describes the rituals, the late-night summons, the hands that wander beneath robes in the name of cleansing sin. She writes of a sister who tried to resist and disappeared, of another who was made to fast for 40 days as punishment for unnatural affections. The journal ends abruptly, mid-sentence. The final words. If she comes for me again, I will. You don't know what happened next. You return the journal to its place and tell no one. What good would it do? You've seen what happens to girls who speak too loudly. You've seen them locked in prayer cells barely large enough to lie down. You've seen them returned with bruises on their arms, a tremble in their hands, and silence stitched into their mouths. Some convents use devices spiked chains around the thigh to prevent impure dreams. Gags during sleep to stop blasphemous speech. One sister, you're told, had her tongue cut for refusing to recite penance. That was in another region, of course. But rumors travel like smoke. You don't know if it's true, but you don't want to find out. Still, your curiosity burns, and late one night when the bell tolls for matins, you don't go to the chapel. Instead, you slip through the cloister, your feet silent on the cold stone. You know the abbess doesn't always sleep. You've seen the light under her door at ungodly hours. You approach quietly. You press your ear to the thick wood, and you hear something you wish you hadn't. Not prayers, not weeping, but a rhythmic wet sound, a moan, a voice murmuring Christ's name, but not like in hymns, like a lover's whisper. Then another voice, a male one, familiar, the priest. You back away, heart slamming against your ribs. You nearly trip on your own robe as you flee. You don't look back. You don't sleep that night. In the morning, the abbess leads Mass with her usual calm. Her voice doesn't shake. Her eyes are clear. But when she meets yours across the altar, she smiles just slightly, just for a second. And you know she knows. You know she saw you. The fear returns. But so does the anger. For the first time since you arrived, something inside you begins to harden, not in defiance, but in understanding. The power here doesn't belong to God. It belongs to those who have learned to wield holiness as a weapon. It belongs to the ones who know how to sin in silence, then demand purity from everyone else. And you are learning. Not how to survive, but how to play the game. You begin to mimic the abbess's mannerisms. You lower your voice to match her cadence. You ask questions carefully, always laced with humility. You watch how she punishes, not with violence, but with permission. She lets the wrongdoer suffer under the weight of her own conscience. You realize guilt is the real tool here, not the lash, not the stone cell, but the voice inside each sister's head repeating, "You are wrong. You are filthy. You are unworthy." So you stop listening to that voice, and you start observing those who still do. Sister Agnes is one of them. You avoid her now, but she comes to you anyway. She kneels beside you in the garden during rosary and whispers that she misses your company, that she still dreams of your face, that she's prayed for your forgiveness. Her eyes are wet. And all you can think is she still doesn't see it. She still thinks this place is about love. But this place doesn't teach love. It teaches longing. Twisted, stifled, weaponized longing. Desire punished until it mutates into submission or madness. You remember Sister Clara. She used to hum softly in the kitchen, even when punished. She once brushed your hair and whispered, "The Lord doesn't mind if we dream." Then one day, she walked into the chapel, poured candle wax over her own legs and sat quietly until someone noticed the smell. She was never seen again. They said she had a vision. You know better. You don't want that to be your ending. But some nights when your body betrays you with warmth, with tingling thoughts, with sinful dreams you can't control, you wonder if madness might be kinder than waking up in this place every day. And the worst part, you're starting to understand why some nuns chose to stay, why some grew comfortable in the rituals, in the order, in the quiet brutality that at least made sense. Some even loved their abbess, defended her, idolized her, because when the outside world offers you nothing, even cruelty in God's name can start to feel like affection. You're learning how to smile again. But not the kind of smile you used to have back when you were free, when your feet touched grass and your hands were your own. No, this smile is precise, calculated. You wear it like armor. You've watched the abbess use it. The delicate, unreadable curve of the lips that says, "I know more than you do." Now you wear it too. Sister Agnes has backed off, but she still watches you with sad eyes like she's mourning something that never began. You don't feel guilt anymore, only fatigue. Fatigue and a strange, flickering curiosity about how far things can go before they snap. There's a pattern here. Loneliness breeds need. Need breeds sin. Sin breeds shame. Shame breeds obedience. But what happens when you feel nothing? When your body refuses to respond even in dreams? When your soul is too numb for guilt? That's when they begin to worry. Because a sister without shame is dangerous. And so they test you. You're told to fast again, for 10 days. This time, no broth, no bread. Only water and prayer. You feel your thoughts slur after the 5th day. By the 7th, your vision blurs during Mass. You're made to hold your arms outstretched like Christ on the cross for hours, until they tremble, until they fall, until Sister Clement slaps you across the face once clean and hard. You don't flinch. They watch you carefully after that. You've become unpredictable. And that's worse than disobedient. Because unpredictability doesn't fit in the schedule. And in the cloister, the schedule is sacred. Still, they don't isolate you again. Not this time. Instead, they reward you. They begin to trust you. They let you lead the younger novices through their evening prayers. They let you scrub the altar, touch the holy relics, light the candles on feast days. They let you into the spaces the other sisters only dream of entering. And eventually, they let you into the abbess's chambers. It begins with incense. The room smells of myrrh and burning sage. It's warmer than the rest of the convent, carpeted in velvet and wool, with tapestries of saints whose eyes follow you. The abbess does not speak when you enter. She only nods. You kneel. She prays over you. Her fingers brush your hair, then your cheek. Then she speaks. Tell me, she says softly, do you still dream you lie? No. She smiles. That same slow, knowing smile. Good. Dreams are for those who doubt. She walks behind you and lifts your chin. Her hands are gloved. But even through the leather, her touch feels practiced, mechanical. She looks at you like a painter looks at a canvas, as if measuring. Then she gives you a key. You are ready, she says. There is one last room to see. That night, you do not sleep. You turn the key over in your hand until the brass warms in your palm. You know the door. It's the one beyond the archives at the end of the oldest hallway. It's been locked since you arrived. No one speaks of it. Some of the older nuns glance away when they pass it. You wait until midnight. Then you go. The door creaks open into darkness. You light a candle and step inside. The room is small, circular. Stone walls, no windows. In the center stands a wooden table with straps nailed into the corners. Beside it, a cabinet. Inside the cabinet, cords, belts, a spiked silas belt for the thigh, a carved crucifix worn smooth from handling. It is not a torture chamber. It is a training room. You understand now. This is where the abbess breaks those who can't be broken publicly. Not through violence, through obedience rituals. You light another candle and begin to read the scrolls on the wall. They contain instructions. How to bind a sister for spiritual discipline. How to speak to her while doing so. What prayers to repeat during anointment. There are diagrams, delicate sketches of kneeling forms, open palms, pressed bodies. Some look almost sensual. Others look like death. You imagine Sister Agnes here. Maybe she cried. Maybe she begged. Or maybe she smiled, thinking this meant she was special, chosen. You close the cabinet and leave. You lock the door again behind you. And you return the key to the abbess's chamber without saying a word. She never asks if you went. She doesn't need to. You're different now, and she knows it. She invites you to sit beside her at supper. She places her hand over yours during evening prayers. She praises your devotion in front of the other sisters. You're rising, and the others are watching. Some are jealous, some afraid, a few hopeful. And then there's Sister Marianne, young, pretty, too innocent for this place. You see the abbess looking at her the same way she once looked at you. You know what's coming. And you realize this is how it works. The abbess finds one, shapes her, breaks her, then replaces her. It's your turn to choose. Do you protect Marianne, or do you let it happen? You watch her during meals. She smiles too easily. She still hums when she scrubs the floors. She hides pastries in her sleeves. She believes in God. You know what this place will do to her. So you make your move. You begin walking with her to the chapel, sitting beside her at meals. You gently correct her Latin. You show her how to clean the altar properly. You become her mentor. And the abbess notices. But she says nothing. Because she knows. And you know she knows. And so begins a new kind of ritual. Not of flesh, but of power. You have stepped into the role once reserved for the abbess alone. And in doing so, you realize the most horrifying truth of all. This place doesn't just consume you. It recreates you. Marianne's laugh still rings too brightly. She doesn't yet know how loud sound can be a threat in this place. She doesn't yet lower her eyes when she speaks to the abbess. You watch her carefully, noting every unguarded smile, every naive question. She is how you once were. A mirror slightly smudged. You know that time will wear her down, or someone else will do it first. So you make a decision. You will wear the mask you've learned so well. You will become her shield. In public, you play the role perfectly. You teach her prayers, you guide her through rituals. You correct her posture gently, just enough to satisfy the abbess's watching gaze. You explain what should not be spoken aloud. She's grateful, of course. She thinks you're kind. You are not kind. You are practical. Because there is no kindness left in you to give. Only strategy. Only survival. One day, while harvesting herbs in the garden, Marianne asks why you never laugh. You tell her laughter disturbs the silence. She looks confused. But silence isn't always sacred, she says. Sometimes it feels like punishment. You don't answer her, because that is a dangerous thought. And thoughts like that don't survive long in places like this. Later that evening, the abbess approaches you in the refectory. She doesn't say Marianne's name. She only says she's spirited, but easily shaped, much like you once were. And there it is. The unspoken question. The test. Will you yield her up as you were yielded? You smile. Yes, mother. I will guide her. That night you slip into the chapel long after Compline. The candles are down to stubs. The icon of the Virgin stares from the altar, her painted eyes dark, almost disappointed. You kneel, but you don't pray. You just listen to your own heartbeat. You've begun to understand something terrible. In this place, guidance often means grooming. Discipline often means domination. Sanctity is only sanctified when no one sees the bruises. The Church writes its virtues in Scripture, but the convent rewrites them in flesh. The body is the scroll. The punishments are the ink. And no one questions what's written. Not when the writers wear veils and hold rosaries. You've seen what happens when someone breaks that script. There was Sister Rosamond. Once, just once, she screamed during confession, loud enough for half the convent to hear. She ran out barefoot and wild-eyed into the courtyard. She shouted that the priest had touched her, that he made her do things, that he said it was part of her penance. The abbess appeared within minutes. The sisters formed a circle around Rosamond. They didn't hold her. They prayed, out loud, as if her screams were a demon being cast out. She collapsed, sobbing. By morning, she was gone. The story the next day was that she had chosen a stricter order far in the north for deeper penitence. You know that's not true. You saw the priest's robes in the laundry blood-stained at the collar. You saw his fingernails torn. You saw the abbess's hands raw and red. They handled it themselves. That's when you truly began to understand that this place is not about God. It is about control, and now it's your turn to wield it. When Marianne makes mistakes, when she forgets to bow, when she sings too loudly, when she lingers in the garden too long, you correct her. Gently, but with precision. You teach her fear in tiny doses. Not too much, just enough to build reflexes. Enough to make her docile, predictable. The abbess approves, but you hate yourself. At night, you lie awake and stare at the cracks in the ceiling. You count your breaths and wonder, is this what the abbess felt when she broke you? Was she ever conflicted? Did she ever care, or did she simply do what was done to her? It's not long before Sister Agnes speaks to you again. She pulls you aside after prayers in a narrow hallway filled with incense haze. Her face looks older, more tired than before. There's a tremor in her voice. You're becoming her, she says. You don't respond. She grabs your wrist. Don't pretend you don't know what you're doing. You pull your arm away. I'm keeping her safe. Agnes laughs, bitter and sharp. That's what I told myself. That if I was the one who touched them, at least the priests wouldn't. You flinch. She leans in. You can't save her and keep your power. You have to choose. Then she walks away. You don't follow. Because what scares you most isn't that she's wrong. It's that she might be right. There's a passage in one of the old psalters written in the margin in a different hand, likely by a nun long dead. A cloister without mercy is not a womb, but a tomb. You don't know which this place is yet. Maybe it depends on who's holding the keys. The abbess begins asking for your presence more often. She begins giving you talks that belong to her alone, approving penitential schedules, reviewing behavioral logs, deciding who gets Eucharist and who gets silence. You're not the next in line, but you're clearly being groomed. The other sisters begin to bow deeper when they pass you. Marianne looks at you like a small dog waiting for a signal. You realize with a cold clarity that you have become the very mechanism that once crushed you. And yet, you find yourself hesitating. When Marianne confesses to you that she sometimes touches herself at night, you don't report her. When she stumbles during Latin verse, you correct her privately. When she cries because she misses her mother, you let her cry. And one day, you say something you never thought you'd say again, me too. You say it softly. You say it as if the walls themselves might turn against you. But you say it. And in that moment, something shifts. Not redemption, not healing, but the tiniest rupture in the stone, a seed of rebellion. You don't water it, not yet, but you do not kill it. The seed grows in silence. You do nothing overt. You smile at the abbess. You recite every line of the Psalms. You still correct Marianne with a soft word and a guiding hand. But beneath all that ritual and piety, something is shifting quietly, stubbornly. You're beginning to remember what it means to belong to yourself. Of course, the convent doesn't allow true ownership. Not of your time, not of your body, not even of your thoughts. Every hour is regulated, every movement documented. You belong to Christ, they say, but somehow the abbess always speaks in his name, with his voice, with his authority. You start to realize that no one hears God in this place except those in power. And yet, strangely, Marianne hears him. She tells you so one morning while the two of you are mending vestments in the sunlit corridor behind the chapel. Her voice is hushed, but her eyes are alive. I heard him last night, she says. Not in words, just a feeling, like warmth, like someone holding me. You pause, needle hovering above a frayed hem. And what did he say? She shrugs. Nothing. But I felt safe. You envy her. You haven't felt safe since your first night here. You haven't felt God at all, not in years. Not since you were 13, shivering in your novice robe, praying for rescue. You nod anyway, because you don't want to take that feeling from her. But the abbess will. She watches Marianne now the same way she once watched you. You recognize the shift, the softening tone, when she speaks her name, the way her hand lingers too long on Marianne's shoulder, the way she suddenly forgets to assign her extra chores. You also notice how she's pulling you away. Less private counsel, fewer shared tasks, no more keys, and that means only one thing. You're being replaced. It was inevitable. Power in the convent is never permanent. It flows like incense smoke, shifting between hands that know how to burn and bless in equal measure. You've held your place longer than most, but now it's slipping, and you are not ready to let go, so you start watching again. You take careful notes. The abbess's schedules, the locked drawers in her chambers, the frequency of the priest's visits, especially on Thursdays, when confession is held behind closed doors for hours at a time. You start noticing absences, short ones, unannounced. Marianne disappears for 20 minutes after dusk and returns flushed. Once she forgets her veil. You find her in the garden, face pale, saying she got lost in prayer. She's lying, and you know why. You remember what it feels like, the confusion, the heat, the shame mingled with strange comfort. You remember the first time you were touched in that room with the locked door and the holy oils. You remember telling yourself it wasn't wrong because it was blessed. You want to tell Marianne it isn't. You want to scream it. But that's not how this works. You need proof, because without proof, you are the one who will be silenced. And so for the first time, you pray not to be delivered, not for forgiveness, but for clarity. You want to see what's being done. You want to expose it. You just don't know what you'll do with the truth once you have it. That chance comes during a rare rainstorm. The cloister is empty. Most of the sisters are inside for evening hymns. You slip away, walking quickly, silently. You know the abbess's route by now. You've timed her footsteps. You've memorized the way she always pauses near the reliquary before turning left into the Hall of Saints. You wait behind the corner, and you see it. She opens the door to the room, and Marianne follows her in, willingly. The door closes behind them. You press your back to the stone breath caught in your throat. You should leave. You should walk away. But you don't. You creep closer just enough to hear. The abbess's voice is soft, melodic. She speaks of Mary, of temptation, of purification. Then a pause. Cloth rustling. A quiet gasp. Marianne. And then the chant begins. Not the kind you hear in chapel, but something lower. Repetitive. Like a lullaby spun from guilt and prayer. Words designed to override thought. The same chant the abbess once used on you. You slide down the wall and bury your face in your hands. She's doing it again. And this time you can't pretend it's just ritual. You stay there frozen until the door creaks open again. They pass you without seeing. Marianne looks dazed. The abbess looks serene. Later that night, you sit alone in the chapel candlelight, dancing against the stained glass. You stare at the crucifix above the altar, the limp body, the thorns, the open wounds. You whisper, if you're still here, show me. Nothing answers, only silence, only your own voice echoing back. And yet, deep inside you, something stirs. Not divinity, resolve. You begin writing. At night, by candlelight on scraps of parchment stolen from the scriptorium. You document everything, the ceremonies, the punishments, the abuses, the priest's role, the abbess's manipulation. You don't sign your name. You hide the pages under the floorboard of your cell. It's not much, but it's a beginning. You don't know if anyone will ever read it, but if they do, they will know. They will know what happened here. They will know what this place became. Not a house of God, but a theater of sin dressed in linen and Latin. And maybe, just maybe, they will believe you. You hear footsteps. You blow out the candle. Hide the pages. Pull the blanket over your legs and pretend to sleep. The door creaks open. It's the abbess. She stands in the doorway watching you. Then she closes it again. No words. No movement. Just the quiet promise of war. You grip your blanket tighter. You're no longer a novice. You're something else now. Not a victim. Not a disciple. Something harder. Something sharper. And you know you are no longer hers to shape. Morning comes, but you don't rise with the others. You lie still in your cell, eyes open, heart thudding in time with the bell. You know the abbess watched you last night. You know she suspects. You've begun something that cannot be undone. And now you must play the part so convincingly that even she doubts what she saw. So when Sister Clement comes to fetch you for chores, you rise slowly. You murmur something about a headache. You move like a woman drained of spirit, just enough slack in your shoulders to appear harmless. You do not run. You do not hide. You perform. Because you've realized the most dangerous thing in this convent isn't power. It's a woman pretending not to have any. By mid-afternoon, the abbess calls you to her chamber. The incense is heavier than usual, thick and oily, meant to disorient. She gestures for you to kneel. You do, your knees find their familiar grooves in the carpet. She doesn't speak for a long time. Then finally, you've been restless. You've been wah. A statement, not a question. You nod. Forgive me, Mother. The devil tests me in dreams. That pleases her. She likes it when you blame your resistance on unseen forces. She's always believed her strength lies in breaking what others cannot see. Dreams, she repeats, are the work of a disobedient mind. She steps behind you and places her hand on your shoulder. Her fingers are light, but the weight of her gesture is not. You must return to discipline, she says. You understand the warning. You bow your head lower. Yes, Mother. You leave with the scent of her perfume clinging to your habit like rot. That night, you move the parchment pages from under your floorboard and hide them in the chapel, beneath the altar inside the hollow of a loose brick, a place where no one will touch them unless they know to look, a sacred hiding spot, or a tomb. You don't know which. The next few days unfold with grim regularity. The routine, once suffocating, now serves as camouflage. You clean. You pray. You eat little. You speak less. You study Marianne. She has begun to glow with that eerie false serenity. Her posture is straighter, her eyes more distant, her laughter quieter. The abbess has begun to drape her in silks during feast days. Let her read from the lectern. Let her touch the sacred linens. You remember when she did those things for you. You remember what followed. The priest arrives again. You watch them disappear into the vestry. You count the minutes. 15, 30, 45. When Marianne emerges, she doesn't meet your eyes. You feel the scream building in your throat, but you swallow it down. You've learned not to scream. Screams only echo. Screams don't get remembered. Records do. So you wait. You slip into the vestry after Vespers. You find the discarded cloth with blood on it, thin rust-colored. You know the signs. The violation isn't fresh, but it's regular. She's being used. Not just touched. Taken. The rage that floods you is cold. Cold and precise. You go to Sister Agnes. It's the first time you've sought her out since she accused you of becoming the abbess. She sees you coming and sighs as if she's been waiting. You hand her a folded page, one of your records. She opens it slowly, reads. Her lips press into a tight line. I was hoping you wouldn't go this far, she murmurs. You say nothing. She looks at you, really looks this time. Are you doing this for her, she asks, or for yourself? You don't answer, because you honestly don't know. Agnes tucks the page into her robes. You'll need allies, real ones, not just scared novices. You raise an eyebrow. Do they exist? A faint smile. Scattered. Broken. But yes, that night you meet in the laundry house long after curfew candlelight barely flickering. Agnes brings two others, sisters you've seen but never truly noticed. One has a crooked wrist from an old punishment. The other walks with a limp. You share your pages. They share stories of their own. One speaks of forced vigils, nights without sleep, made to kneel before the statue of Mary, with arms outstretched until collapse. Another describes the abbess's private retraining, where disobedient sisters were made to strip before her and repeat phrases of loyalty again and again until they forgot who they were. You all listen. You do not cry. There is no room for tears anymore. Only plans. You decide to gather more. Not just evidence. Voices. If you can show the bishop, if you can send a letter, slip it past the priest, bribe a courier, maybe someone will listen. You know it's a thin hope, but it's hope nonetheless. You return to routine by day, rebellion by night. You begin collecting scraps of cloth soaked with oil, bits of wax, rope from the garden, not for destruction, but for escape if needed. You hide a small dagger beneath the floorboard. You pray to a God you no longer trust. Marianne begins to change again. You see the cracks. She stares blankly through morning mass. She flinches when someone touches her arm. She no longer hums. And one evening, after you light the chapel candles together, she turns to you and whispers, I think I've sinned. Your throat tightens. What happened? I let her. I didn't stop her. I thought she was saving me. Her voice breaks, but I feel so empty now. You place your hand on hers. It's the first time you've touched someone in weeks with tenderness. You didn't sin, you say. She did. Marianne looks up at you, tears brimming. And just for a moment, you see the girl she used to be. You realize something in that moment, something awful and true. You may not be able to save her, but you can make sure someone remembers what was done. The day the bishop arrives, the sky splits with thunder. It wasn't supposed to storm. The sun had risen pale and dry, and yet by midday, dark clouds gather like judgment over the cloister. The bells ring longer than usual. The halls are scrubbed, the altar cloths changed, the wine decanted. You know the drill, but you also know the real reason he's here. A scheduled visitation, they say. Routine, administrative, but you've heard whispers. A courier passed through the village. A sealed letter made its way through the priory gate under cover of darkness. Someone wrote to the bishop weeks ago. Someone with careful penmanship. Someone who signed only with the symbol of a withering lily. He arrives on horseback, flanked by 2 silent clerics. He wears the red velvet of his office like armor. His rings gleam in the candlelight. When he steps into the chapel, every nun lowers her head, even the abbess. You keep your head bowed, but your eyes open, and you watch. The bishop kisses the crucifix and greets the abbess with a gentle smile. "Sister Benedetta," he says, "still as radiant as the last time I visited." Her smile flickers, but only for a second. "Welcome, Your Excellency," she says. "We've prepared the records, and the sisters are eager for your blessing." The bishop nods. "Yes, I will also hear confessions, privately. Your blood cools, because this is either your salvation or your doom. You're summoned first. You kneel in the vestry alone, but for the bishop seated behind a curtain of violet cloth. You can't see him, but you can hear his breath. Steady, waiting. "Speak, child," he says. And you do. You speak carefully. Not of pain, not of names, not yet. You speak of discipline turned into obsession, of rituals twisted into games of control. You speak of the slow erosion of spirit under the guise of piety. You describe the silence, the locked doors, the oil, the whispered chants no longer found in Scripture. You do not cry. You do not pause. When you finish, there is silence. Then, and the priest, he asks. You nod. He visits more than required. He conducts confession without oversight. And the abbess, you hesitate. Then she grooms the novices. She isolates them. She controls them until they forget how to think. A beat. And your proof, I've written it, hidden it. I can show you. You half expect him to laugh, but he doesn't. Instead, he says something that makes your skin tighten. You are not the first. You look up, though you still cannot see him. What do you mean, the order receives letters? Anonymous, broken, contradictory. But now and then a voice emerges. Clear, steady. And when that happens, he pauses. We come. You don't dare hope yet, but you lead him later, just after dusk, to the chapel. He follows you in silence, his robes whispering against the stone. You kneel at the altar and remove the brick with shaking fingers. The parchment is there, dry, clean, whole. You hand it to him. He does not read it there. He tucks it into his sleeve and nods once. Then he leaves you in the dark. You don't sleep. The next morning the bells do not ring. The priest is gone. No mass. No confession. No communion. The abbess calls an emergency meeting. You gather in the refectory, 50 veiled women seated shoulder to shoulder. The room buzzes with the weight of something unseen. The abbess stands at the front. Her face is calm, her posture perfect, but her hands grip the lectern too tightly. She says the bishop is conducting a private investigation, that some among you have invited doubt into sacred walls, that evil hides behind a gentle face. She does not say your name, but she doesn't have to. Sister Agnes meets your eyes across the table. She is ready. Sister Clement looks away. She is not. Marianne fidgets with her spoon, her face blank. You wonder if she remembers what softness felt like. That night, 2 sisters vanish. No ceremony, no farewell. Just empty beds in the dormitory and a bloodstain on the corner of one sheet. You feel the walls tightening. The abbess is losing control, and in her unraveling she becomes more dangerous. She speaks of purging. She speaks of renewal. She makes the sisters fast again harder this time. Bread only water measured in gulps. No speaking after sunset. No eye contact in the cloister. You feel the fear rising like smoke, but you hold steady. You keep writing. You keep hiding. And one night, as you light candles in the chapel, Marianne comes to you with shaking hands. I want to leave, she whispers. You pull her into the shadows. Her eyes are red, rimmed with desperation. Please, she begs. You said there was a way. There isn't. Not a clear one. But maybe a crack. There's an old escape route, the root cellar behind the garden wall. You've studied it. The foundation's loose. The bishop's visit might buy you one quiet window of passage if timed right. You nod. In 2 days, you whisper. After midnight prayers. Her breath shudders. Thank you. You hold her hand. You wonder if it will be the last time. Because even as you plan her escape, you know someone else may pay the price. The plan is simple. Too simple, maybe. You've timed the guard rotations such as they are. You know when the outer halls fall quiet after the second set of evening prayers, when the sisters retreat to their cells, and the abbess takes her long ritual walk around the chapel perimeter. You've tested the soil near the garden wall, pressing your fingers into it by moonlight. It shifts. It yields. Just enough space if one is small and desperate. Marianne is both. The bishop is still present, ostensibly overseeing matters of spiritual discipline. He's confined mostly to the scriptorium during daylight and the abbess's chambers in the evening. But you suspect he knows more than he's letting on. Perhaps he's gathering his own evidence, or perhaps he's watching you. Still, the air in the convent is changing. Every word feels heavier, every glance sharp. There's a tightening across the halls like string wound too tight around a throat. Someone knows. Maybe the abbess. Maybe Sister Clement, who has been following you with narrowed eyes. Or maybe it's just your own fear breathing down your neck. You don't sleep the night before. You kneel by your bed and pretend to pray until the candles burn down low. When the bells ring midnight, you rise. Marianne is waiting in the shadows by the kitchen, her veil pulled tight, her fingers clutched into fists. You motion her forward down the back stair into the corridor that leads to the herb garden. The world feels like it's holding its breath. You reach the wall. The bricks are loose as expected. You kneel, dig your fingers under the root where the soil parts. Marianne crouches beside you. I don't know if I can do this, she whispers. You grab her hand. You have to. If you stay, she'll destroy you. Marianne swallows. She nods. You lift the bricks aside one by one, your fingers raw and bleeding. The opening is small, just enough to squeeze through. She slips in head first, pushing dirt and grass with her palms. Halfway through, she stops. I'm scared. You press your hand against her back. So was I, and then she's gone. Just like that. Out. Free. You replace the bricks, your heart hammering, and return to your cell, legs shaking. You lie awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling, waiting for screams, for alarms, for bells. None come. When morning arrives, there's no mention of her, not at breakfast, not at prayer. Just an empty seat. Just a line crossed off the chore list. The abbess doesn't acknowledge it. She says nothing. Not even a glance in your direction. That silence terrifies you more than any accusation could, because it means she knows. And she's waiting. You find Sister Agnes that afternoon in the laundry. Her arms are deep in the rinse basin, sleeves soaked. She's gone, you whisper. Agnes doesn't look up. I know, she says. The priest left last night too. You blink. What vanished? No horse, no message, just gone. Your stomach knots. Do you think the bishop? I think she interrupts, wringing out a cloth that the abbess is tying off loose ends. That night, the abbess calls for you. No excuse, just a summons. You go, because to refuse would be to declare war without armor. Her chamber is dim, lit only by the flames of 2 narrow candles. She sits beside a writing desk, her fingers laced, her expression unreadable. Tell me, she says quietly, what happened to Sister Marianne. You meet her eyes. She fled. The candle flickers. And you helped her, you don't speak. But your silence is answer enough. The abbess rises slowly, walks to you. You expect her to slap you, or scream, or banish you, but she only tilts her head. You were my finest pupil, she says. You understood the weight of obedience, the purpose of sacrifice. I thought I had shaped you into something better. You don't move. I was wrong. She turns her back to you, her hands behind her spine like a queen surveying a battlefield. You've poisoned this place. Then she says the one thing that cuts deeper than any blade: you're no longer welcome here. You laugh just once, dry and bitter. You never welcomed me. She doesn't respond, just lifts her arm and points. Out. You hesitate. Then you walk. No ceremony, no public shaming, no lashings, just exile, as if you were never here, as if none of it ever happened. You pass through the cloister, through the chapel, past Sister Agnes, who watches you from the shadows, with something that looks like both sorrow and relief. You step into the outer yard where the grass is overgrown, and the gate stands waiting. The guards open it without question. And just like that, you are outside, free, and still caged. Because as you walk down the hill, away from the stones and the bells and the cold gaze of your former sisters, you realize something awful. You don't know how to exist beyond those walls. The world is too wide, too loud, too unstructured. There are no bells to tell you when to eat, no chants to drown out your thoughts. Only the sky and your silence. You walk until your legs give out. You sleep under trees. You beg for bread in the next town. You say you were a servant. You do not tell them you were a nun. You do not tell them what was done to you. And still every night you write, on scraps of cloth, on wood, on stolen parchment. You write every name you remember, every ritual, every punishment, every night they touched you in the name of heaven. You write because you're terrified that if you don't, no one will ever know it was real. And you write because somewhere Sister Marianne is walking a path of her own. Maybe she'll read your words someday. Maybe others will too. Maybe one day the story won't end with escape, but with reckoning. You settle in a fishing village by the coast. They ask no questions and you offer no stories, just labor. You carry baskets, scrub floors, muck fish. You sleep in the back of a granary beneath sacks of barley, lulled to sleep, not by chants or bells, but by the slow crash of waves. The sea is endless, strange, and free, but the silence you carry inside is louder than ever. The rhythm of the convent doesn't leave your bones. You still wake at matins, still whisper Ave Marias into the dawn, still flinch at loud voices. You still cover your hair, still bow your head, still walk with your hands folded in front of you like you're trying to disappear. The townspeople think you're just Bauchus. They don't see the fracture beneath, but some do notice the marks. A merchant's wife asks once too kindly what happened to your wrists. You tell her the truth, but in pieces. I was in a convent. A pause. It was not what I was promised. She doesn't press, but she starts leaving extra apples in the crate for you. A loaf of bread wrapped in cloth. She knows more than she says. Women always do. You begin writing again. This time not in scraps, but in order. Careful, deliberate. You borrow ink from the chapel, take discarded parchment from the tavern ledger. Every night by candlelight you shape your story, every punishment, every ritual, every whispered sin dressed in sacred robes. You write not for forgiveness, but for memory, because forgetting would be worse than pain. Forgetting would mean they win. One night a knock on the granary door. You freeze. Voices. 2 men. I heard she came from the convent down south, the one under investigation. You step into the corner, press yourself against the wall, breath shallow. They speak of arrests, of church audits, of bishops moving quietly in the night, of other nuns too found in cities, in shelters and brothels. One slit her wrists on the altar of a roadside chapel. Another is said to wander fields barefoot, reciting psalms with no memory of who she is. You listen trembling, because you know these women, not by name, but by ache. When the men leave, you sit in the dark, shivering your hands, gripping your blanket, like it might keep you from vanishing. The next morning you go to the church, not to confess, but to ask. The priest is old, gentle. His hands do not tremble when they bless. His eyes are sharp, but soft. I need to send a letter, you say. He nods. Somewhere specific. You hesitate. Then to the abbey where I once lived. He doesn't flinch. Instead, he leans forward and says, "Are you trying to forgive or to expose you don't know how to answer?" So he simply hands you parchment and says, "Write it anyway." You write. You don't ask for punishment. You don't even ask for mercy. You ask for records, names, burials. You want to know how many girls are still inside. A month passes. Then a letter returns. No seal, just parchment folded plain. Inside is a list, 16 names, all novices, all under 15. Still present, still under the abbess's care. You recognize 3. One was barely 9 when you left. You weep, not like before, not like the empty, stunned sobbing of the cloistered years, but real weeping. Full, human, alive. And then you stand. You gather your pages, your letters. You pack bread, a blade, and your records into a bundle. You don't ask the villagers to pray for you. You don't ask God either. You just walk. North. Toward the monastery where your bishop friend once studied. Toward anyone who might listen. Anyone with ink and title and power. You walk for 3 days, feet bleeding, stomach empty, heart full. You reach the town by the 4th morning. Towers rise over fields of wheat. Monks pass without meeting your eyes. You approach the gate. A friar stops you. You show him the pages. He leads you inside. No questions. Just nods. You wait for hours in a stone hall lit by tall windows. Then a door opens and the bishop you once knelt before steps into the light. He is older now, more tired, but he remembers you. I was wondering when you'd come, he says. You hand him your bundle. He reads in silence. When he finishes, he says only, "You've written the truth." You nod. "I want them out," you whisper. They will be. You want to believe him. But you've lived too long in doubt to trust words alone. So you stay. You clean the monastery floors. You copy scriptures. You ask questions. You write again, this time not just for yourself, but for the girls still in the convent. You describe every ritual, every name, every locked door and whispered command. You describe what it means to be broken in God's name. You send it to scribes in towns beyond, to other nuns who fled, to churches with ears still open. And slowly, faintly, you hear that echo return. Letters come back. More testimonies. More stories. Some darker than yours. Some eerily the same. One describes a ritual where girls were blindfolded and made to marry the Virgin lying naked before a statue kissed by older sisters who called it blessing. Another speaks of forced bloodletting to release the sins from between the legs. You tremble reading it, because it means this wasn't isolated. This was taught. This was culture. You and Marianne weren't victims of a monstrous woman. You were victims of a system, one that rewards silence, obedience, suffering. But not anymore. You will not be silent. You will not forgive. You will not forget. In the market square, in the shadows of chapels, in the corners of libraries, other women like you, heads covered in scarves, backs hunched by shame, eyes that dart and then linger, recognizing something familiar in the way you walk, the way you brace before speaking. They do not always talk, but when they do, it's in half-finished sentences, confessions that never use names. It started with blessings. She told me the Virgin wanted me to learn what love felt like. He said pain was the door to holiness. You don't need the whole story. You already know it. You meet one of them in a small fishing port south of the old priory lands. Her name is Teresa, though she says it like it was borrowed. She doesn't remember her real name. The convent took it, gave her a saint's name, called her bride of Christ while they bled her into compliance. She shows you her back. It's striped with old scars, the kind not left by lash alone. They used to say I could feel sin moving beneath my skin, she whispers. They said pain drove it out. You don't know how to comfort her. You don't even try. Instead, you open your own robe and show her your wrists. She stares, then laughs. Not the bright kind. The hollow, brittle kind that shakes when it's done. And just like that, you are sisters. Not by blood, not by God, not by order, but by survival. You bring her with you. Back to the monastery. They give her a bed, bread. She weeps for hours in silence. And when she's ready, she begins writing. By now, your manuscript has grown heavy, not just with your own words, but with others. Agnes's name is in it. So is Marianne's. So is Teresa's. There are over 40 stories now, some with names, some anonymous. Each page inked with pain that smells faintly of incense and iron. The monks have begun compiling them, quietly, without fanfare. They bind them in brown leather, mark the cover only with a single word burned into the spine testament. It is not a holy book, but it is sacred, and it will be read. The bishop writes to Rome. You don't expect much, but the letter goes out anyway. A courier rides for weeks across frozen roads. Meanwhile, word spreads. Other convents begin whispering. Some sisters are removed. Some abbesses vanish. One convent burns to the ground under suspicious circumstances. No one speaks of it, but everyone understands. There are those who still defend what was done. They call it exaggeration. They say you misunderstood the purpose of suffering. They say the abbess only followed tradition. They say you invited sin. But for every voice raised against you, two more rise beside you. And slowly the tide shifts. One night, you return from the chapel to find a letter beneath your door, sealed with red wax. Inside a single page unsigned, I was 12. She made me kneel before the crucifix and ask for forgiveness for what she did to me. I forgave her, but I will never forget. Thank you for helping me remember I was real. You clutch it to your chest and weep, because that is what they tried to take from you, your reality, your ability to believe what happened, to believe your own body, your own memory. They tried to rewrite you into silence, but you wrote back. And now the world is listening, even the church. The bishop visits again, this time with escorts, scribes, clerks. He reads parts of your testament aloud in the great hall. Some monks weep, some look away. Some you suspect already knew. The bishop says this is just the beginning. There will be inquiries, transfers, public denouncements, maybe even trials. But that part is no longer yours. You've done what you came to do. Now you begin the harder task, if shown. You still hear the chants when you close your eyes. Still walk in step with ghost bells. Still wake before dawn and feel for a veil that no longer rests beside your bed. But the world is different now. Not kinder, not safer, but real. And in it you have your name back. You speak it aloud sometimes, just to feel it take shape in your mouth. You visit the fields behind the convent walls one last time. You stand near the place Marianne slipped through. The grass has regrown, the bricks reset, as if nothing ever happened. but you know the truth. The soil remembers, the stones remember, and now so does the world. You walk away without turning back, because you don't need to see the past anymore. You've carved it into the future, with ink, with witness, with pain transmuted into language. There's one final entry you write in the testament days later, just before the monks seal the volume and send it to the city. We were not weak. We were shaped, cut into forms they found useful. But even clay hardens in time, and when it breaks, the shards are sharp, and we remember how to cut back. You sign your name at the bottom, not the saint's name they gave you, not the title they branded. Your name, the one you were born with, the one you reclaimed. And then you close the book. Spring comes slowly that year. The frost clings to the ground longer than usual, stubborn and cold like memory. But the light is changing, softer, warmer. You notice it when it lands on your hands, hands that once bled in silence, now ink-stained from testimony. You have been free for over a year, and still every morning your body stirs before the sun. But instead of matins, you walk to the edge of the village where the wildflowers are beginning to bloom. You sit in the grass and feel the earth under you damp, forgiving alive. You are learning to live outside the ritual, not just physically, but spiritually. You still whisper prayers, but now they are your own. No Latin, no memorized litanies, just words that come to you in the moment. Words that mean something. Sometimes, thank you for letting me wake. Other times, please let them be safe. And sometimes still, why did you let it happen? There is no answer, but maybe the asking is enough. Your writing has taken root far beyond what you expected. The testament has been copied 4 times, then 8, then 17. It spreads not like fire, but like a bruise, slow, quiet, undeniable. Monks debate it. Priests pretend not to have read it. But women talk. Women always talk. One day a girl barely 16 arrives at the monastery gates. She carries nothing but a bundle of cloth and a crumpled page torn from your book. She holds it like scripture, like salvation. You take her in. You help her wash. You give her broth and warm clothes. She doesn't speak much at first. But after a week, she asks you the question they all ask, will it stop hurting? You don't lie. No, you say. But it will change. She frowns. Change how? And you think for a long moment before answering. It stops feeling like your fault and starts feeling like proof you survived. Her lips tremble. She nods. That night, she sleeps through the bells. First, the monks begin opening their doors to others runaways, former novices, even elderly sisters who left the convent decades ago but never found peace. They arrive one by one, bringing nothing but names and stories and bruises no one else believed. You write them all down. You become the chronicler of pain, but also of resistance. There is no more pretense, no more hiding. You are no longer just telling a story. You are building a record. Each page a weapon against forgetting. One morning a letter arrives. From the bishop. He writes in elegant script, but you can sense his weariness between the lines. He tells you that the church has ordered the dissolution of 3 convents, that bishops have been instructed to revise how female orders are governed, that young girls may no longer be entered into cloister without their consent. It isn't enough, but it's something, and something matters. Attached to the letter is another list, the names of sisters still unaccounted for. You recognize one. Sister Helena. You feel your breath catch. She had been old even when you were young. Silent, shattered. You remember her scars, the way her eyes drifted as if looking inward for somewhere to hide. You never saw her after your exile. Now you know why. She had been moved to a new cloister, a quieter one, smaller, remote, forgotten. You pack a satchel. You go alone. The journey takes 2 days. Fields, forest, thin dirt roads. The new convent is crumbling, more ruin than refuge. Its walls sag with mildew, the windows cracked, the chapel long closed. No bells ring, no voices chant, just birdsong and dust. A sister greets you at the gate. She does not wear black, only gray. She leads you down a hall that smells of damp wood and candle wax, and then into a small room where Sister Helena sits in a wooden chair, staring out the window. She doesn't recognize you, but that doesn't matter. You kneel before her gently, take her hand. It is thin, dry, but warm. I came to tell you, you say softly. They listened. Her lips twitch. You're not sure if it's recognition or reflex. You speak anyway. You tell her what happened after. The writing, the bishop, the pages now living in cities and monasteries. You tell her the girls are escaping now, some before the damage, some after. You don't know how much she understands, but when you finish, she closes her eyes and she whispers, "Thank you." You stay with her for hours. She dozes. You sit beside her reading quietly from your own work, just a few entries. Not the worst ones, the honest ones, the ones that carry dignity in the face of desecration. You leave just before dusk. You don't cry. There's no need. The words have already done their weeping. When you return to the monastery, the sun is setting. You walk through the courtyard. You hear laughter, soft, tired, real. Someone is singing a hymn out of tune. Someone is baking bread. Someone else, maybe the girl with the torn page, is playing with the cat that wandered in last week. This place is not a cloister. It is not a sanctuary either. It is something new. Something broken, yes, but blooming. Like a field left fallow too long, now erupting in wildflowers no one expected. You light a candle before you sleep. You whisper, "May we all remember," because you know that forgetting is how it starts, and remembering together is how it ends. There is a rhythm to healing, not smooth like a chant, not orderly like the rosary, but uneven, hesitant, human. Some mornings you wake up and feel like a woman again. Other mornings you feel like a shadow of the girl they tried to erase. But the difference now is this: you don't flinch from the mirror anymore. You see yourself and you stay. The monastery has become something strange and sacred, a place of ruin turned refuge, a haven for the ones cast out, broken, or disbelieved. It doesn't resemble the convent you escaped from. There are no punishments here, no fasting for purity, no cleansings. The women eat what they want. They wear colors. They laugh without guilt. One even paints. She paints saints with dark skin and soft eyes. She paints the Virgin with her arms open wide and no swords piercing her heart. She paints a Christ who holds wounded women in his lap and listens to them, truly listens. And when she's done, she says, "If they burn my paintings, fine. Let them. But they'll never unsee them." You help her hang one on the monastery wall. The bishop never takes it down. Every week, more letters arrive. Some from other survivors. Some from priests and monks who finally found their courage. Some from women still trapped using coded language. Our prayers are especially painful this month, or I find myself fasting more than necessary. You recognize the signs. You reply to every single one. And when a letter comes addressed not to your saint name, but to your true name, you hold it like scripture, like a resurrection. Inside, a message from Marianne. It's short. 3 lines. I am safe. I remember everything. I am not afraid anymore. You press your hand to the page and weep. Then you sit down and write her back. You tell her what happened after she left. You tell her what she started. And you thank her not because she needed saving, but because she dared to believe she deserved to be saved. The next day, a wagon arrives at the gates of the monastery. Inside, 5 girls, barely more than children. The driver says nothing, just leaves them and goes. You step forward and they step back. One whispers, "Is this another convent?" And you kneel in the dirt, look them each in the eye and say, "No. This is the end of the convent. They don't understand yet, but they will." You bring them inside, you feed them, you listen. Each one carries a story, like a cracked vessel, leaking pain in places even they can't see. One was made to sleep on nails to learn humility. Another was forced to serve a priest during Lent. Another doesn't speak at all, she just flinches every time someone closes a door. You give them space. You give them warmth. You let them breathe. You teach them to write. Not just their prayers, but their truths. You tell them your voice is holy. And when they finally believe it, they write with fury. One girl fills 10 pages in a single night. Her hands blister. Her tears smear the ink. And still she writes. You place her pages in the Testament. She watches you do it. And something shifts in her face. Not relief, but recognition. She exists. And now someone will remember. The monks are building a second hall now, this one just for women. For scribes and teachers and caretakers. Not nuns. Not wives of Christ. Just women who survived and now tend to one another. They ask you to help lead it. You say no. You say, let someone new have that power. But you agree to stay, to teach, to write. You walk with the girls to the stream each morning. They ask questions constantly about saints and sins and why God lets bad things happen. You never claim to know the answers, but you never stop them from asking. You let them question everything, even you. One day, one of them asks why you still wear your old veil. You hadn't realized you were still wearing it. You reach up and pull it off, fold it, set it aside. I don't need it anymore, you say. The wind lifts your hair. You feel naked but not ashamed. And just like that, another layer of them is gone. The ghosts, the rituals, the old shape of you. The girls cheer, and you laugh. Really laugh. For the first time in years, your laughter is not bitter. It's bright. You spend your nights by candlelight still writing. The Testament is over 300 pages now, bound in dark cloth, edges worn, spine cracked from use. But you're not finished, because the story didn't end when you escaped the convent. It began. You write about Agnes, how she stayed, how she smuggled others out, how she vanished after the bishop's second visit. You don't know where she is now, but you pray she's still fighting. You write about Teresa, how she learned to speak again, how she sings while she works, how she carved her story into wood, not parchment. You write about the painter, how she turned suffering into icons no one can ignore. And you write about yourself not as a victim, but as a witness, because that is what you've become. Not a martyr, not a nun, not even a survivor. A witness. And witnesses carry truth like fire, not to destroy, but to warm cold places. You dip your pen in ink. You look out at the quiet world beyond the window. And you write, we were never meant to be forgotten, and now we won't be. There is no real ending, not in stories like this, not when so much was taken, not when so many are still missing. Some of the girls who fled the convents never resurfaced. Some changed names, crossed borders, lived and died as faceless laundresses, seamstresses, mothers, or beggars. Some were buried in unmarked graves, their voices never heard, their pain wrapped in wool and silence. But here, in this place of parchment and ink and breath, their names remain. You've created a wall of memory in the east wing of the monastery. It isn't made of stone or marble, but of paper, dozens of pages hung on pegs and strings, ink-faded corners curling. Every woman who passed through these gates has written something, even if it was just one sentence. I was there. She hurt me. They lied. I survived. Some of them never learned to write at all. They carved words into bark, scratched lines into clay tablets. One painted her story in a circle of symbols, no letters, no Latin, just pain translated into shape. And still you hung it on the wall. Because every story matters. Because you once feared your story would die with you. Now it never will. Visitors come now. Quiet ones. Scholars. Priests. Women from other towns who whisper as they walk the wall, stopping to trace trembling fingers over the edges of someone else's story. They read the page about the girl who was made to kneel naked in a candlelit chapel, while a priest recited verses over her womb. They read the confession from the nun who spent 20 years believing her suffering made her holy until she bled too much and no one noticed. They read about you. Some cry. Some do not speak at all. But no one walks away unchanged. One day a papal representative visits. He's younger than you expected, barely 30, a scholar in boots too clean for his robes. He asks to see the testament. You lead him into the archive, open the chest, and lift it with your own hands. He carries it like it's heavy. Because it is. You ask him quietly, will it make a difference? He looks at you, and for once you believe the answer. Yes, he says. Not fast, not loud, but yes. That night you write your final entry, not to the church, not to the world, but to the girl you once were. The one who walked through those convent doors at 13 thinking she'd been chosen. The one who knelt and obeyed and wept and begged to be pure. The one who was used and shamed and made to believe pain was a sacrament. You write to her with steady hands. You were not impure. You were not weak. You were holy even in your fear. You did not deserve what happened to you. And you are not alone. You never were. You seal the page and place it at the top of the archive. And you sit back in your chair, light flickering across your face, the night warm for once. Outside, the girls are singing, off key. Loud, joyful, not a hymn, a tavern song someone taught them. You laugh into your hands, shaking your head. The sound is life itself. The walls still stand around you, but they no longer hold you in. Now they hold your words, and in that you are finally free. You rise, walk to the window, and lean out into the air. You close your eyes, and you say to no one in particular, "Let them come. Let them read. Let them know." Then you whisper the truth that guided every page. They tried to make us forget, but we remembered. We remembered everything. So now, as you lie there in the dark, breathing softly, with your eyes closed, maybe you can feel it, the weight of what was endured, and the quiet strength of the women who endured it. The stones of that convent still stand somewhere in the hills, forgotten by most, erased from records, but not from memory. Not from this story, not from you. Because memory is a kind of resurrection, and remembering those who were silenced is a way to bring them back, not as victims, but as witnesses, their names written in ink, their truths carved into time. Their voices, once trembling in the chapel shadows, now whisper through pages that cannot be burned. And perhaps as your breathing deepens and the shadows in your room soften into peace, you'll find comfort in knowing that no matter how dark the ritual, how cruel the silence, how distorted the holiness, there were always women who fought quietly, who held hands in the dark, who smuggled pages in sleeves, who loved one another when no one else did. This story wasn't told to disturb your sleep. It was told so you'd know they existed. And now, thanks to you, they still do.